Proverbs chapter 30, verse 8 through 9 says, "Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is needful for me, lest I be full and deny you and say, 'Who is the Lord?' Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of God." The other day I had what could be called an ethical conundrum. The question was in regard to how much the pastor of a church should be paid. Some extreme traditionalists might say the pastor should be paid nothing and live in the church. Others might say whatever the elders of the church decide. I, on the other hand, thought the pastor should make the median income for the area. That way his family could live in a house and participate in the community in an effective manner. But as I thought about the concept of the pastor having the median income, I had another thought. The median income, depending on how many kids the pastor has, might just be enough to scrape by. This then alerted me to a dangerous reality that many pastors are living regularly. That reality would be stealing from the church. Let's say that the pastor had been hit with a series of unfortunate events. One after another drained his savings rather quickly until he could no longer pay the bills. As a pastor in this situation, he should have no trouble asking the church for help. But instead of asking for help, the pastor chooses to take some extra money from the offering plate. This is obviously extremely sinful, and if the pastor does not repent, he could and should lose his position as the pastor of that church. So this led me to ask, what if the pastor just got paid a little extra? Nothing extravagant, just enough so that if a series of unfortunate events did occur, he would have enough to make it through. That little extra pay helps the pastor out and will prevent him from stealing from the church. Once again, the pastor should not steal from the church, but the opportunity for sin should also be limited as much as possible. With higher pay, I believe that it could be prevented. But many might say a pastor should be paid very little, if at all. So this leads us to the question of the day. Is less greater than more? Obviously, in arithmetic, less is certainly not greater than more. And most people would argue that more money is always better than less. More friends are going to create more enjoyment than less friends. And more presents under the tree on Christmas is always a pleasant sight. So, is there any situation in which less is greater than more? Well, of course there is. Less cancer is certainly better than more cancer. Less addiction is greater than more addiction. And less crime is greater than more crime. Well, that seems pretty simple then, right? Having more good things is better than having less good things. And having less bad things is better than having more bad things. But is there a time where there can be too much of a good thing? I think that the answer is rather obvious on this subject. Having too much of something, anything really, is almost always a detriment. Food tastes really good, but too much of it will kill you. Water hydrates you and sustains your life, but too much of it and you will drown. Sleep brings rest, but too much and it brings laziness. What about friends? Well, too many friends and you may have no real time for relationships. How about money? Surely too much money cannot be bad. But of course, it certainly is. Too much money brings pride and greed and selfishness. Having so much money in this life can trick you into believing you are a god. It is no longer, ask and you shall receive. It becomes point, and it is mine. If you think having too much money is actually a good thing, think about what it truly means to have that much money. You will not be able to discern between the wolves and the sheep. You may even become paranoid that your children will try to kill you and get the inheritance. Having such vast wealth comes with a very heavy burden that most men cannot bear, at least not if they still have a conscience. Alright, while having too much of a good thing can obviously bring harm, how can having less of a good thing be good? Well, the only way having less of a good thing is indeed good is if having less of one thing that is good brings you closer to something that is much better. For instance, working and providing for your family is a good thing. However, if that work pulls you away from your family, what good is it? Sacrificing the overtime pay to go to your child's basketball game will mean much more than another present under the tree. You may not believe that, and the child at that time may ask you for one more present under the tree, but in the future, they will certainly remember an absent father, not an absent present. So what is it then? Is less greater than more? Well, it should have been obvious from the start. Do not desire too much, and do not desire too little. Do not sacrifice too much, and do not sacrifice too little. Know what tempts you, and what can be enjoyed in moderation. But do not murder in moderation, or anything of that sort. Know good from evil. Having more is not evil, nor is having less objectively good. Each can lead to great sin. Each can lead to great temptation. So let's go back to the pastor. If we give him more, will it prevent him from stealing? Well, what if, with his excess, he sees he only needs a little more to buy a new set of golf clubs?